All right, great. Let's get started. Thank you. And thanks everybody for joining us. We know your time is valuable and you're busy, and we appreciate you dedicating some of that time to Pro Control today. We're here to talk about what's new with the line, what's exciting with the line, a lot of things that we've done. The highlight's going to be Vin walking you through the Pro Control Studio software, the Pro Panel app, the new UI for the R series as our single room solution, everything you need to know to get going. On the hardware side, we've had some updates recently, mainly in that R series, what we call the Plus packs. So the Pro 24R is now packaged with the dock, the charging dock, as the Pro 24R Plus. Likewise, the Pro Link R processor is now packaged with the 4 emitters, calling it the Pro Link R Plus. The reason we did this is these were the most common purchase with items, so we packaged it up to make it easier for you to buy and to inventory. First, I'm going to review some of the thinking, the recent thinking behind Pro Control, kind of the why behind what we're doing. One of the things that we have done recently is launched a brand new website. And Murphy's Law said that within 5 minutes of putting out our press release this morning, the site went down. And we found out that it was actually a hosting issue across Media Temple where the site's hosted, and 200 of their sites were down. So if you were on this morning and had a hard time linking into the Pro Control site, sorry, that was not our fault, but it is back and running now. Might be a little slow this morning, but do get in and take a look. On the dealer side, the navigation is going to be exactly what you're used to seeing. It's a fresh look. What we did was really give it a consumer-facing skin on the front. So realizing that most homeowners that hit that site do so at the recommendation of their integrator, saying, I think I should be putting Pro Control into your media room, go online and take a look. So we want it to be a great homeowner experience when they get there. And of course, behind the dealer login, all that great content is there for you. Vin, the next slide, thank you.
Oops, sorry.
No, that's perfect. Next slide, please.
All right.
Awesome. So the basic consumer pitch is here. I won't read through it, but key thing for you guys to know is that even if you're doing another control brand, this should be your most profitable single room solution. Pro Control. It could be a TV room, guest room, the new work from home office, you name it. The Pro Control Studio Wizard speeds you through that installation. You get in, you get out, you get on with your business. And it's particularly important in this COVID-19 environment that you spend as little time in the home as possible. Pro Control Studio enables you to do that. Again, Vince is going to walk you through just how easy that is. So we make the audacious recommendation that you should have a Pro 24R Plus and a Pro Link R Plus kit in the truck at all times. Use this for every installation you're doing that has a TV or a receiver. Vince's going to show you just how easy it is, how much more than a universal remote. It's a smart system that elevates every purchase. And I should say that while we lead with the single room solution, what we call the R series, we scale beautifully into the whole home, particularly for that two-way feedback that the Z series enables. Again, this is an ecosystem dedicated to your success. Ben, let's go forward. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the Pro Panel app. You know, takes that Pro Control experience anywhere across the room, across town, across the world, particularly when it's connected to that Pro Link Z controller. Let's keep going, Vin. Trying to make lots of time for the demo here. So again, our message to the homeowner is pretty simple. We're integrating the home tech so they can focus on what's most important. So check out that new site. If you are a current Pro Control dealer, again, your existing login works. Everything is the same in terms of the navigation, just the content's been refreshed. We've got a lot of new videos that we've been putting up there. We've got one already, but we will have a whole new training module that we're building into the site to make it even easier. If you're bringing on a new technician, just get them in there. It's going to be really simple to get them started. Our goal is to help you do more and better business. Ben, let's move forward. Again, way more than remotes. This is a full ecosystem dedicated to your success. And while I say homeowner, we should say that our wireless communication makes it incredibly easy to bring this into a rental environment as well. We're not pulling wires. It's easy to do. You can get in, get out, get on with your day. And most important, it's a protected line. We don't sell this directly to end users, and we don't sell online. We're committed to integrators like yourselves and our distributor partners like Volume to make this work for you. So Ben, let's go. I guess the only important point here is I like to say it's so easy that even the marketing guy can do it. So with that, Mr. Bova, take it away.
Okay, I just did a little comparison here of the R series and the Z series. And one thing about Pro Control you're really going to enjoy is that there is a great upgrade path without any real learning curve. You're going to feel really comfortable programming both of these remotes if you need to. You could stay on the R series throughout your whole career, or you could graduate to a remote that has some more features and some more bells and whistles. But the R series is going to give you some great control options, whether it's a single room, whole house, media rooms are a great specialty. And I don't even see a reason why you couldn't put this in a commercial office or something like that. So these are just the bells and whistles of both remotes. One thing about these remotes is that there is a touch screen on these remotes, and at this price point, it's very difficult to find a dedicated touch screen. I just wanted to point that out. It's a very elegant remote. They both use a lithium battery with an elegant look, and you're really going to, the client's really going to use this as a showpiece. And what would be a good control system without a control processor? And you see here the R series and the Z series control processors. One thing about control in this price point is that usually you get stuck with a base unit. And there's a big difference between a base unit and a control processor. With a base unit, you're sending out multiple commands from a remote control, multiple triggers that are going, from the remote to the base unit. With a processor, you send one single trigger code, and that will run all the commands at the rack level. So what that means is you're not going to get any missed commands. You're going to get some great reliability. And one thing about our R series, which does have a built-in 433 megahertz antenna, we have superior radio frequency than most of our competitors, and we really pride ourselves on that bulletproof communication. So it's a fantastic, at a fantastic price point, you're getting some real power and brains. So let's talk about some of the price points. We're going to show you some dealer cost here. These are US dollars, so we apologize for anybody who's overseas. The Pro 24 Plus carries a dealer cost of $180, and that has a dock that comes with it. The ProLink R Plus has the same dealer cost, and that comes with emitters. And the Pro Panel requires a license. We sell a license in 1-packs and 5-packs. They can cost anywhere from $49 for a single license to $129 for a 5-pack. So a very great price point that can get into just about any home and any budget. We also have an iPro 8. Now, what an iPro 8 does is it kind of gives that customer who insists on having all iPhones or iPads in a house, giving them a dedicated remote at a really aggressive price point that actually tracks the movements of the iPad and iPhone so that it's always in tune. So, for example, if you pick up your iPhone and start watching cable or any other activity, you could pick up the iPro 8 and it already knows where you are and what you're doing. So you can get that, non-overbearing control, so you don't have to bear over your screen like you do with some of these, iPhones and iPads. So the iPro 8 comes at a dealer cost of $90. And again, it's a perfect companion for the Pro Panel apps or for that customer who insists on all Pro Panel instead of dedicated controller. All right, so we're done with the PowerPoint. We're ready to jump into the demonstration of the software. Once you install the software, give it a launch. Now the software is, you see that there's several panes to the software, and you could move these panes by stretching them, by just grabbing on the pane handles and moving them. So you'll be comfortable with whatever space you have. Another thing I want to point out is that if you go to the help button, besides giving you the current version, which is 1.5, you can actually change your user interface theme from a light color to a dark color. So sometimes at night, when you're doing some intensive programming, you might want to have a dark color to go easy on the eyes. or during the day when you're doing a few maintenance and things like that, the light color will work really well. Now, let me just explain the panes real quick. We have a little toolbar on top, of course, with all the common activities, saving your file, opening new files and stuff like that, and even downloading the files to the processor and the remote control. We also have a Pro Control Devices panel. This is where you add all your devices. On the bottom is all your control devices. Those are all your source devices. So you're going to add these that way, and you're going to be able to see everything in your system at once. On the right side is, of course, all the programming and your properties and everywhere where your bitmaps you can drag into an interface and things like that. So let's get started by adding our Pro Control devices by going up to the Pro Control Devices pane and clicking on that add sign. Now, when you click on the add sign, you're going to have several options. You could add either the Z series or the Pro 24 series. So you'll decide which series you're going to use. We're going to do the Pro Control R series. So let's start by adding a ProLink R processor. Okay, so now you'll add the processor and we'll give it a name. Since we're programming a media room, we'll just call it ProLink Media Room and we'll click OK. All right, so we've added our ProLink. Now that we've added our ProLink, some other options pop up for that Pro R series. Let's go and add the Pro 24R remote control. And of course, we can also name this Pro 24R Media Room. Now, you can select a theme for the templates. We give you two themes, a new template known as Shelby, or our prior template, which has been around for a while, called Deanna. Shelby is a big improvement in that it adds devices that are more current and up to date. However, both templates are really nice and really will give you a good look, and you can commingle some of the graphics, so you can do a combination of both if you wanted to. So we're going to pick the Shelby template and click OK. Now, all the devices we add will adopt that template. Let's go and add a Pro Panel device now. I'm going to add an iPad, since that has a lot of screen real estate and shows up really well. Same drill, we'll call this iPad Media Room, and we'll select that Shelby template. Now, please note, you could add several controllers or several iPads to your Pro Control project. You don't have to, you're not limited to one. So now we'll add our iPro 8, which is going to be the companion for the iPad, just in case the customer wants an alternative to using the iPad, and if he doesn't have a Pro 24R or whatever else, there's a reason right there. But let's go and add this. We'll call it iPro 8 Media Room. Click OK. Now that we've added these, I want to show you some other options in here. We also have some legacy iPhones, different resolutions. We have the 4 and the 5 series. And of course, we could still continue to add devices if we wanted to. All right, at this point, you might want to go, since we have an iPad in the system, you might want to go and add your Pro Panel license. Just simply click the Pro Panel license tab, click Add, and now you can either purchase a license. We no longer sell the 2 license pack, so it's either the single or 5 pack. And you'll enter your license code just so that you can use the iPad on your local system. All right, now that we're done adding our devices, let's go down to the Control Devices tab or pane here, and we'll click Add. So the option we have here is infrared devices. Since the Pro 24R will have the 4 emitter ports that we can use for IR control devices. Now, you could use either our built-in Pro Control library, which is very consolidated, very accurate, very detailed, and consistently named. And even the commands themselves inside the device names are consistently named. That's the way we can do auto programming really well. You could also use your own user codes, your user IR codes. And we go into that in a more advanced training, but you can learn in your own IR codes through the remote control, or by entering hex data into the IR Library Manager, which comes with Pro Control. We'll talk about that in a little while. So let's use the Pro Control IR codes because everything we have here is present. Let's start by adding a DirecTV satellite. So I'm just going to start typing in DirecTV. You're going to notice that it weeds down your choices. Let's pick the HR series, address 1. Now, first thing we need to do is rename this from the category, which is a set-top box. Let's call this DirecTV. And we can specify which templates we want for this DirecTV box, because the goal of this is to create a template which is going to be automatically programmed with most of our commands. So let's pick the DirecTV template in all 3 cases, for the Pro 24R, for the iPad, and for the iPro 8. All right, so now let's click OK. And now that device adds. Notice that it will preserve the original name, just in case you name it something that's unorthodox. So you'll always preserve that original name, but you'll see here you've named it DirecTV. DirecTV is the manufacturer, and it's the name of the device in the IR library. And all 3 remotes have a page, and that's why they're checked off. You might not want to put a device on all 3 remotes if the remote maybe doesn't need maybe a receiver page or something you're trying to restrict on a child's remote or something like that. So you always have that option. All right, let's add another device. Let's go and add a Blu-ray player. In this case, we're going to look for a Sony Blu-ray from our list of devices. So as I type Sony BLU, you can see there's a Sony Blu-ray most models. See how consistent that is, and so that we don't have to weed through hundreds of different models when they're all the same codes. So let's pick that most models. And it's the same drill. We're going to rename this. If you like that name, we'll keep it. And these are going to be auto-selected for us, and we're going to add a new Blu-ray page for all 3 controllers. We're going to click OK. All right, so we're moving here really quickly. Let's add another device. Let's go and add an Apple TV, which a lot of people are using these days. So let's type in Apple TV, and you can see here your choices. We'll pick the Gen 4 model. And since this is a Media Manager category, let's change the name to something more specific. Let's call it Apple TV. Now we're just going to select the pages we want. Notice that we can give you templates for lots of different media managers. We have a template for Apple TV, for Chromecast, for any kind of generic media player, like maybe it's a movie streamer or some other type of Android-based media streamer, and a Roku. In this case, we're going to select Apple TV for all 3 remotes and click OK. Okay, so we've added our DirecTV, we've added our Blu-ray, we've added our Apple TV. Let's go and add our television. So let's look for a Samsung TV, and we'll look for Samsung TV most models. That's going to have all the IR codes we need. All right, so we could change this name if we want, or you could leave it. And we'll create a page if the client wants smart TV functions. That's fine. Let's create a page for him to go to his TV if he wants to utilize some smart TV functions that aren't in his Apple TV. And we'll click OK. Next, we'll add a receiver to the system. Since it's a surround room, we'll add a receiver. So click Add again. Oops. Infrared device, and let's search for a Yamaha receiver. I'm just going to look for a Yamaha RXA series. And you'll see here, there's several choices. We have different zones, and we even have an essential commands only. I'm just going to pick the RXA/RXV main zone, 2011 to present. That means they haven't changed their codes in quite some time, but that doesn't mean we haven't been keeping up to date with the latest and greatest codes. So let's select that Yamaha receiver. Now, in a lot of cases, and we'll rename this, in a lot of cases, you don't have to create pages for every device. In other words, if the client doesn't want a page for the receiver, especially if they're someone who's not really in the know about how to control receivers and things like that, then uncheck the pages. So we'll uncheck all these pages and we'll click OK. This way, there's no work to do. And since the client doesn't need that and get himself into trouble, we don't have to worry about that. All right, so what did we do? We've added all of our Pro Control devices. We've added all of our controlled source devices. We've added a Pro Panel license. And now we're ready to configure properties. Let's start by configuring properties from the top down. Let's click on the ProLink R processor. Now on the right side, anything you click on now in this tree will show you the properties for that device. So for the ProLink R, let's configure the system zone code. Now the system zone code will be a number from 0 to 255. What that number will do is basically change the channel on the radio frequency so that if there's other systems, especially in other ProLink Rs in the home or in the development nearby, you won't have any kind of interference from that other system. So anything from 0 to 255. Let's go and select the number like 27. Now the channel is an interesting one. It goes from 1 to 13, and the channel will basically ensure, if you change the channel, that it will not collude with any other ProLink processors in the house in terms of commands. So for example, let's say I'm controlling my ProLink R in my bedroom, and my wife is downstairs controlling her ProLink R, changing the channel on her cable box. Well, the double commands, the constant channel up and channel up, will not collude with each other. So let's change this to number 7. Now, it doesn't mean, if you don't do this, it won't mean you won't get away with it, but it's always best practice to do that. Next, DHCP or static. You decide. If you do know for DHCP, make sure you fill in the information. It's up to you. I don't really have a preference in that case, unless you want to, if you're doing remote access or something like that. Now let's name our IR ports. So let's call the first port DirecTV. And we're just going to coincide these with our devices. Let's call the second port Blu-ray. We'll call the third port Apple TV. And let's make that last port, let's just call it TV/receiver. We'll use a dual emitter. Now, if a device doesn't have if you didn't want to use an IR port, then don't name it here. There's ways to not have to use your IR port. However, if you don't use the IR port and you want to fire directly out of the remote control, just be careful, because you won't be able to do that with Pro Panel devices since they're not capable of firing out IR. So in this case, we have a Pro Panel device, and let's say our TV didn't have an emitter and we wanted to fire from the remote directly. Well, we wouldn't be able to do that with the iPad. So just so you know, in more advanced training, we'll do standalone devices. Those are devices that don't use the processor to process commands. Now, Synchronize Pages is an interesting command. You usually get a yes or no option here. If you say no, that means that your iPro 8 will not track the movements of the iPad. In other words, it will not synchronize the pages. It will not jump with it. It will not follow it. So we're going to say yes here so that they're both in touch with each other, but you might have a different preference. Remote access will give you the ability, or host name will give you the ability to put in a DNS account if you want to use remote access. Maybe you want to take your iPad on the road and control your home remotely. Your port should stay on 4110 unless there's another reason. And of course, if you're using a DNS account, you would have to forward that port to the processor. And of course, where you're located, you could fill in your location information where you're located in the world, your latitude and longitude. You could also set a clock of your time zone. So if I'm in the Eastern time zone, so I can set Eastern time. And I could set my city. Since I'm in New Jersey, I'll just say New York, close enough. Okay, so you get the idea. So that's it. That's as simple as it gets. For the Pro 24R, there's just little preferences you have to fill out. Enable tilt switch, so the remote wakes up when you tilt it. Yeah, we'll keep that on. That's convenient. Now the remote will make a beeping sound every time you press a button, so you can change that to on-screen buttons only, or none, or the keypad and on-screen buttons, whatever your choice is. And of course, you can make your beeper level low, high, or medium, low or high in this case. So you can take your preference there. Backlight timeout. I usually make this about 35 seconds, especially when you're giving a client a demo. You don't want that remote timing out just because the remote's idle. That determines, how long the remote will time out from the moment it wakes up without a touch. And the backlight level, of course, will go medium, low, and high from the list here. All right, the iPads don't have any property. Oops, clicked the wrong thing, sorry. The iPads don't have any properties, neither does the iPro 8, so we don't have to worry about a thing there. Let's go to the DirecTV. Now, the only thing we have to do here, the only job we have here is to tell the property where the IR is coming from, whether it's the processor or the remote control. That would be when you don't have an emitter on a device, you can't run an emitter. Maybe you want to fire out directly from the remote control. So everything we have here is from the processor. Now you're going to do is just determine the ports that it fires out of. For the DirecTV, and we've named the ports here so we know what they are. If we didn't name the ports in the processor settings, we would just see port 1, port 2, port 3, port 4. So is the DirecTV firing out of port 1? Yes. Blu-ray? No. Apple TV? No. And we could change the default minimum repeats as well. Not really important. Let's move to the Blu-ray now and configure the properties. Is it firing out from a DirecTV port? No. Yes for that. No, no. Apple TV is next. So that's a no, no, and no there. Samsung TV. Now, if the Samsung TV was firing out of the remote control directly, we would change this to remote control. And last but not least, our receiver. No, 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 yes. Fire out of that port. All right, we have signed our ports. What's next? What's next? The next thing we're going to do is review what we just created. We're going to go and we're going to look at what happened. So let's go and review the remote. We could start with any remote we want. Let's start with the ProLink R. I'm just going to double click it. I'm sorry, not the ProLink R. Let's start with the Pro 24R. If I double click it, it will take us to the GUI screen. And I'm just going to stretch these panes out so you can see everything involved here. As you can see, it programmed a home page for us. And I could make this a little bigger. It programmed a home page for us with the devices we've added. It programmed an Apple TV icon, the Blu-ray, the DirecTV, and the TV button. Now, if we wanted to change any of these, it'd be pretty simple. We would just click on the images folder here, and it would show us all different graphics, which we can sort by the library type. So if I'm looking for Pro Control, specifically Pro R series graphics, I can select something like, let's see here. We can go and select the Source and Zone Small or the Shelby Remote images, and we can see all these different images here. Let's just keep it on all and search for different graphics. So let's say I'm going to look for a smart hub or something like that. Maybe since it's a smart TV, maybe instead of the TV icon, I want to put a smart hub there. All I have to do is overlay that. And if you change your mind, all you have to do is overlay it again. It'll remove that and add a new one. So it's really easy to swap graphics. These placeholders on the screen, when you load the remote, the client won't be able to see these. These are just ways for you to align graphics with the graphic tools on the bottom. We'll go into that in a little bit. So I can select from the drop down here any page that was created. So I could go to a please wait page that was automatically created for us. I could go to the power off confirmation page that was already created for us, or any of the source pages. Let's start with DirecTV. So you can see here that this created a DirecTV page for us. It actually created 2 pages. How do I know that? Because this says screen 1 of 2. So if I advance this here, you can see that on the second page, it created channel icons for us. Now we don't have to use these. We can change these to any icons we want. I'll go and pick the Food Network icon and change the history channel. So you could change and remove any of these that you want in favor of other channels. Okay, so this is what we're doing in this step. We're going through these devices and performing maintenance on them. I don't have to do a thing here, but if I wanted to, maybe if I wanted to change this command, well, let's pick a command I would want to change. Maybe I want to put a Netflix button on here instead of display. I'm going to go to my properties. If I click on properties, you're going to see all the properties for this specific button, what the background color is, let's open these all up here. The button placement, what pixel, what XY coordinates it's on, what the width and height of the button is, whether it's a reversed state graphic. In other words, I could flip this to the reverse state by just making it yes. That's great for devices that have different page numbers and stuff like that. I can make the button inactive simply by clicking inactive. I can show that button on all screens, meaning that it will appear on every page. Maybe if it's an important button, you'd want to do that. I could change the text to anything I want. So I'll call this Netflix. And I'm going to move on to the next page. I could change the text color to any color I want. And we give you a ton of different colors here on the color wheel, or you could even set a custom color. Okay, so it's up to you. Even the text color when it's pressed, even the font size. If you want to make this a little bit bigger, go ahead and make it a little bit more prevalent. I can make it bold. And of course, you can align that horizontally and vertically on the button as well. You could also do you could do a lot of other things if there's an icon on a button. So let's say I don't want this Netflix on here. And let's go to images. Let's look for an actual Netflix graphic. So I'm going to bring a Netflix graphic in here. And now I'm going to go back to my properties, and now these will apply to my properties. I can change my align my graphics on horizontal axis. I can do a vertical axis move. I can align the icon and add padding to it. What does padding mean? Well, if I added padding on the bottom, which is 4 pixels, maybe I wanted to add 25 to that. It would basically put spacing from the bottom to the icon. So you can always change the padding to accommodate some text if you want. You also have the ability to put a border on a button, change the border color, and of course the fill color. If the button is filled with a color, maybe you made your own button, you could make it transparent, and you could change the press state as well to a different fill color. So you have all these custom properties that you can basically use to really affect the way your interface looks. So we looked at the Images tab. We look at the Properties tab. We also look at the Macro tab. Well, we still have that old display command on that Netflix button. Let's change it to something else. So I'm going to click Add, and you're going to see our macro steps. That's a list of all of our tools that we can use to change macros and make them perform differently. Now, that's the beauty of Pro Control, in that you can really change the way devices work and how they work for the customer. You have precision control over the customer's, the way the macros run. So let's click on the Devices tab and click on our Blu-ray here. Let's go look for a Netflix function. These are all in alphabetical order. Let's double click the Netflix function, And let's click on that display function and click on the delete command. We just deleted that display command and replaced it with Netflix. That was simple. And you can see we could do this with all of the other buttons if we want to change anything or add anything, and so on and so on. We could also change text. If I didn't want this text to say Blu-ray, maybe I want it to say movies, I can simply change that. I could also change the way the text appears. If I want to make it yellow to highlight it or any other color, that's not a problem. Okay? Now, all these other little commands here do a lot of special things that affect the macro and the way it runs. We have delays we could put in the macro. We have things like button pause and repeat steps, which affect the way we press the button, have different results based on how we press the button. We could put comments in our programming. We could toggle codes. We can use the voltage sense on the ProLink R to do a power sense and see if something is on or off. And we can also have all the devices libraries, flags, which we go into in a more advanced class, and page links. We can make this button jump to any page in this template, including a control panel, which will allow the client to set his own little preferences. Okay, so the idea now is to go through these and just make these the way you'd want them to look. You would go and here's the television. So one button here wasn't programmed. It wasn't auto-programmed. Why? Because it didn't find a home for whatever was on that button in the template. Now, the way to see what was on that button is by right-clicking on this button and clicking Disable Auto-Programming. Now that button will show up. There was no home and therefore no check mark. So we could change this to anything we want. Let's make this do something like, well, we have the Smart Hub app. Let's make this do something like the picture or tool. Let's do tools. And now I can go into the macro editor, click add, go to my devices, click the TV devices, and now find that tools command, which is in alphabetical order on the bottom. Here's tools, and we'll add that. Now note that you want the command to run on the control processor, not the remote control. If you tried to bring it up to the remote control, it wouldn't do it because it knows that this device, the television, is running from the processor. Okay? All right, so another way to look at all the pages, like an overview way of looking at all the pages, is clicking the pages button on the remote. And I'm going to stretch this out to really show you what this shows you. It gives you like a more of an overhead view of all your different pages on your remote. And you could do a lot with this. So for example, if I click on this little button here, I could delete this entire page. I could rename it. I can move the page down in order. Maybe I want to move that please wait page all the way to the bottom. You know, it doesn't matter what order they're really in, only for you, the programmer. Now, but I don't want this around, so I could right-click on this and delete this screen. And I could delete this other screen. We don't need 2-3 pages on our home page. And we can perform quick maintenance this way. Another thing we can do is, and I could just double-click on that, is change the background. So let's look at some images for the Pro Control. And let's just clear out the search box. And I'm going to look for some images here of the backgrounds. And you'll know that the background images are backgrounds by looking at that little yellow icon on the right side. So let's bring in a different background here. So you could change the look completely. You could use your own backgrounds as well, but you could change the backgrounds as well to really give it a different look, or use a custom look for your customer, depending on the decor of the room, depending on their preference, or whatever else. So you could change the remote completely by editing all these things I showed you. You also have the hard buttons as well, and these are all going to be auto-programmed for you as well, depending on what device you select. So let's look at the DirecTV again real quick. All these buttons, if I click on them, and they have check marks, which mean they've been programmed, will have a command on them. These have been all programmed for you. No dragging and dropping. It's simple, okay? Now let's look at some other controllers now. Let's go to our, well, first, what we should do actually is we should go to our homepage and program macros. Now you're going to notice that these macros have been programmed for us by the Pro Control software. You can see here that there's commands that are going to remove commands like page jumps and things like that, and delays, and all the commands that run on the processor are on the bottom. It'll even select an HDMI command for you, like just guessing at what it might be. But it will power on all your devices as well. Now, is this macro completely right? No, we do have to make a change to it. So let's add some functions here. So it's turning on the TV. So let's look at how this works. First, there's a command that says start control processor commands. What that means is it will start running these commands as soon as it sees these commands up here, and it will run this simultaneously. So it will start the Pro Control processor commands. It'll start running these one at a time, and then it will change as it's running those commands. It will change to the please wait screen. It will pause for 4 seconds, and then it will jump to the Apple TV. Now there's also a 4-second delay here. So ideally, this will run in the same time frame as this. And then at the end, it will jump to the Apple TV. Now I don't see an input command for our receiver, so let's add one. Let's go to our receiver, and let's put in a input. Let's do input 2 here, and we'll add that right there to our receiver. That's it. There's really nothing else we have to do. We can tweak some things around. We could add other macro steps if we wanted to eliminate delays or things like that, but we're pretty much done. Pro Control really did it all for us. And then we could move on to the next button. And then this one is actually going to have the right input because it knew that it was a Blu-ray, and it actually found an input on the Yamaha name Blu-ray. So we're pretty much done here as well. Of course, we could change the order of these around if we wanted to. We could move these in any order, quick and simple. For the Apple TV, again, it turned on the TV, it turned on the receiver. I'm not sure why. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm on DirecTV. Turned on the DirecTV, and it turned on the TV input. So let's add an input for the receiver here as well. So let's just do HDMI 1 in this case. And then for the Smart Hub, it also knew how to program this. It turned the receiver to TV. It changed the TV to antenna, but we could just delete that and then add a function from the TV to go to the Smart Hub. Let's do that. Simple. So we've already, and then of course you program your power off as well, and the power off will basically change to the power off screen. So let's go to the power off screen. Let's look at the power off button and notice that this is all done for you. Let's reorder this so it shuts off the TV and the receiver first. Simple. It'll start the processor commands. It'll start powering off devices. In the meantime, it'll change to the please wait page, wait 4 seconds, and then move the page back to the home page. So we're pretty much done programming this Pro 24R Plus remote. It's done. There's nothing really left to do. Of course, we could go and change the backgrounds. We can go and make cosmetic changes, but we're pretty much done with this remote. All of these pages have been programmed for us. And, with channel macros, real simple. Click on the channel macro, and we'll have this thing open like this. Let's click on the DirecTV. And all it is putting in the channel 231. Let's move to the next one. 670, 665, 23. It's just as simple as that. So programming those pretty quickly, and you'll be done fast. So let's move on to another remote control. Let's click Devices. And now let's look at the iPad. Now you'll notice that the iPad has some strange criteria, which at first will look foreign to you. You'll see something on the left side here. It's like a scrolling menu. Now when you look at this, you really don't know how to translate this to how the experience is going to look like. So, and I can't show you an iPad, but I did take a video of one just to show you how all this looks. On the left side of the screen, this is like a scrolling menu that will appear on every page of the iPad. Now, this could easily be changed. So you could put, if you go to the background area, it'll show you what the top toolbar will look like, and you can change this, what the left side background will look like, even what the title would be. So I could change this from dashboard to, I don't know, let's call this selections or whatever. And now this will be named selections when you program your iPad. So on the on the left side, it will always have these quick commands. We can also add commands as well. For example, if I wanted to add maybe some receiver commands, let's see if we have a receiver icon. Let's see if we have any. Let's see what we have here from our Pro Control R. Let's do audio or sound. Oh, I'm sorry, they're not in here. They're in the source commands. So you could put other icons in there if you want by simply dragging them in. I don't remember what the name was, but you would just drag that in here like that. So maybe you wanted to put some other commands to give the client some quick commands so that he has the option to select maybe some settings or lighting or anything that you would come up with. Now, on this screen, it looks weird. It looks like it's grayed out. That's because you're seeing something called a viewport. And if I right-click on the viewport and edit the viewport, this is a gesture-controlled option that you can add to your Pro Panel devices, which will give you a way to have a section of the screen that you can gesture control through or flick through, so you can program bunches and bunches of different frames on that page. Now, in this case, we only have 4 activities, but if you had 8 or 9 or 12 activities, these aren't going to fit on one page. But with a viewport, the client can just flick this to the left and be able to go from panel to panel to panel. Let's show you how to add to other ones. You would add to this panel, and you could go to 3 and 4, and you could keep adding icons. And even though this page is the same page, you created something called a viewport, which is just a gesture-controlled option. Now, it's optional, but we created one for you. And the way you would program this, and it's real simple, you would just program on the Pro Control the same thing you did on the Pro 24R. What I like to do is I like to go to the Pro 24R and just copy the macros. I just say copy and then go to my iPad and just paste the macro, and I replace whatever's existing. So now if I go to my macro here, it'll show you what it pasted. Now you might say, well, what's all that red stuff? Well, with an iPad, things don't run on the remote, or everything runs on the actual processor. So we don't need to start processor commands, and the delays don't get done on the remote control. They get done here. So we don't even need that as well. So now what you see here is just jump to a please wait page, and then delay. I'll put the delay up here, and then you can have the commands run. So you just copy and paste those to each of these as well. So let's look at the iPad pages. We'll see the please wait page, and then we see the power off and the same type of look and feel. Here's our DirecTV page. Why did we create 2 viewports on here? Well, we only wanted to give the client one single page, but we wanted to create a viewport so if he gesture controls this to the left, it'll give him his transport commands. So it's a great way to give the client a single page with a lot of different options by creating a viewport. We'll show you how to create a viewport in a bit. On the bottom, you'll see all these channel icons on a viewport. Now, if you only have 10 channels you want to give a client, you don't need a viewport. But in this case, you could give the client frames and frames and frames of viewports of channels so that he can gesture control and control them. Let's take a look at our Blu-ray player. No viewport here, so it's just a straight Blu-ray player with some commands missing. Now again, if we wanted to put a command here, we could either copy and paste this and then just align this here and then change this with the commands and text that we wanted to change, or we could use that disable auto programming to pop the icon up that was supposed to get programmed, but it couldn't find a match in the IR library. And then you could just change this to whatever you want, maybe a Netflix also. So we also have the Apple TV done for us, not much to do there, and the television, which also has a viewport. Why? Because you do need transport commands. And if you look at the second page of our viewport, you'll see there's transport commands. Okay, so we'll go and we'll program that as well. Pretty simple. You're talking 5 minutes of work. You copy and paste the stuff you need, change the stuff you need, and of course the background's in here as well. If I go to images and I go to Shelby iPad images, I could change the backgrounds as well on my iPad. Okay, you can make it look totally different. There's more images over here, kind of like the gray. So you could change the entire look. And again, you can use your own images as well if you choose to. Now the pages on this is also viewable as well. I'm going to pop this up a little bit, make it a little bigger. But you could scroll through this and change pages easily by looking at the way they've been arranged. Delete any unnecessary second pages and things like that. You could also add pages to your devices as well. If you click the add function here, you can add a blank page. You could add a page from the template. And here's a template of all different Shelby pages for us. We have, I don't know what we would add to a TV in terms of this template, but if you wanted to add a generic page and maybe program some other things on it, you could do it. You know, maybe you want to add another function of the TV using these templates for other devices. Okay, so you have that option. You could also import a page from another control system that you've programmed already. Let's say you programmed the Pro 24R already with the television interface and you've changed it drastically. Well, you can go to your other system file, look for that file, import it in. It'll give you a list of devices, and you select a device you want to bring in, and boom, it'll populate, and you'll just delete this page. So again, it's real simple to do. Last, let's look at our iPro 8. Here's our iPro 8. Now the iPro 8 is pretty much done for us. You'll notice that these have been already programmed with the devices that we've added. The TV button, the smart TV, the satellite function, the Blu-ray function, and the media function. Now you might ask, well, why is it named like that? Well, it names it generic names because this comes with a sheet of buttons that you can pop out and put into the iPro 8. And we give you tons of different buttons. Let me show you real quick some of the buttons that we give you, these devices. You can see here that there's quite a few. We give you commands, we give you a room sheet with all different rooms. So you have everything you need here to pop in an activity and pop in something else. So you'll have that capability. And this is already programmed for you. You know, you have your satellite page, look at all the check boxes. Your pause button has been programmed, your reverse button, your exit button. These are all, everything but a check mark is programmed. Now, if you see a button that's not programmed, if there's any kind of fallout for some reason, just go to your add command, go to your devices, and then pop that command in. You know, it's just that simple. But there's really not much missing here. In fact, almost every single button is programmed. Same thing goes for our Blu-ray player. You know, most of these buttons are programmed. You know, if you wanted to add a button, you know, you could, or if you wanted to add a function, no problem. And since this device is in sync with the other device, it will change when that device changes if you select synchronized on the ProLink processor. So you'll have to tweak the macro to work that way, but as soon as you go and press the Blu-ray player on the other function, it will change with this. Now, there's only one thing you have to worry about with the ProLink, with the iPro 8, is that these buttons have to be named exactly the way the devices are on the iPad. So if you look at the iPad, you'll see that, for example, the DirecTV is called DirecTV. You have to make sure on the iPro 8 that this is named just like that. So you would go here to your pages, you would go to your satellite TV and rename this by right-clicking on this menu. So that's what you would do. Oops, I don't know what happened there. Okay, well, I lost that, but sorry about that. I don't know what happened there, but that's really the gist of it. You know, programming the Pro Panel is simple to do. It's easy, and I'll show you a quick video of what it looks like when it's all done programming. So what you'll do is, for the very first time, you'll go to your settings button, and then in the settings, you'll scroll down to the Pro Panel app. You'll select the Pro Panel, and you'll flip that reconfigure flag to on. That will tell it to download it from the processor. Then call up your Pro Panel app. It will know now to go get a processor file, select the processor from the list, select the iPad you want. You might have multiple, and it will download. And now this is what I was talking about. You'll see your commands here on the right side. There's your viewport that you're flicking through, and here's the one on the bottom. Let's go home and go to the next activity. And you can see here that, you know, everything, there's no view panels here, so you don't have to worry about that. Here's your Apple TV. And see how this all stays the same. And here's your television. And you'll see the viewport in action. It's always good to give your client that little swipe thing. And when you turn your system off, power off, it'll take you back to your home page, or you could create a welcome page for your client. Okay, so that's pretty much all we have for the programming. It's that simple. There's really nothing to it. You can get through a system in a matter of minutes. And the best part is that when you're finished programming your devices, you could use them for other future projects. So you never have to worry about having to reinvent the wheel. And if you name it the same name, you could import a different type of Blu-ray player, and it will reprogram all the codes with the library in the new file. So you can search and replace, you can take devices out and put new devices in without losing your graphics. And it's real simple. We're going to have more advanced trainings in Pro Control coming up. So stand by for from announcement in the very near future on some more advanced trainings. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Gary, and we're going to finish up with a Q&A session, if you don't mind.
Yeah, awesome. Guys, I know that our panelists have been answering questions in the chat room. I don't see anything brand new there, Vincent. John and Angel, thank you so much. Hey, Vinny, can you give me that video so I can get that out to the dealers tonight as well?
Sure, absolutely. It's yours. I'll send it over.
Well, it was a good recap video, you know.
Yeah, because it's hard to show people what, you know, when you look at the software, you see a couple of pieces to it. It's hard to tell how that all jives on the Pro Panel, but hopefully that video showed you how they come together and how you can change things.
Awesome. Hey, so John and Angel, anything from the dealer support angle you might want to mention here?
Well, I think it's just really important from the questions. It's really important just to underline that if you have the remote control in your hand, be it the Pro 24R, the iPro 8, or even the iPad is sending one single command via radio frequency. And then once it hits the processor, that's where the macro generation occurs. That's where the thinking and logic occurs. That's where all of the hardwire connections to the devices are. And I think traditionally speaking with other control platforms, when you execute a command on a remote control, and let's say the macro to turn it on to the Blu-ray player is a 10-step process, traditionally speaking, the remote control will wirelessly send all 10 macro steps directly from the remote control. And it's talking to the base station where it's just kind of sending out where that information goes. Whereas with Pro Control, you send one wireless trigger command from the remote to the processor, which totally eliminates any issues with interference. Maybe some radio frequency interference happens halfway through the macro and it misses a macro step, which totally kiboshes the plan. With Pro Control, you are sending one trigger command directly from the remote to the processor. And I guess to take that another step is when you're using the iPad is using Wi-Fi to talk through the network to the processor, again, to send that one single trigger command. And so that seems to be a lot of the root of what I was seeing with the questions today.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fantastic technology because trigger codes are really, you can't do a trigger code with a base unit. You can only do a trigger code with a processor in terms of running all the commands at the rack level instead of running them one by one from the remote. Because I'll tell you, like in today's world, the chances of a signal getting missed are high with all the things going on in a typical home. So with a trigger code, with a 433 trigger code, you know that one trigger code gets to the processor, and getting there really has to matter. And I think that's where our superior radio frequency technology really takes the cake, because that trigger code will arrive and it will run all those macros without, no matter how hostile the environment is. So it's a real great value for having a processor over a base unit.
Got it. Yep. Thanks, guys. Vinny, thank you so much. John, hey, you want to do this in 4 hours? Let's do it again.
I'm ready.
Absolutely.
So I want to thank all the dealers who joined us today. Matthew, Mark, Kyle, John, the list goes on. If you've got a team member that you want to hop on this, get them back in 4 hours if that's doable. If not, make sure you see my email later on with this whole recap, everything we covered here today. And also I've got contact information for John and Vinny and Angel and Bob for anything you guys want to get specific with. But great job, guys. Great panel. I loved having the pro control discussion today. Awesome. Anything else to end this thing with, guys?
No, I would just say thanks to everybody for being here. And we're really, one of the great things we pride ourselves on with this line is that we have excellent support for it. So if you have any questions on how to design a project or even a system or anything based on the hardware, please feel free to use us for any kind of project help.